You can start, sir.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible? Good
I can
morning.
hear you. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I can have some technical snag, but I hope everything is fine now. So good morning, and welcome to this live session. I want to believe all of you are enjoying the lessons, enjoying the chapters that you are learning week on week, and you find the assignments interesting. And we've been receiving some feedback, and we've been responding to your questions on the chat box. And we, of course, look forward to receiving more questions and more feedback. And we are happy to help you wherever we can. And some things, as I said before, if it's related to your career aspirations, etc., you may find our answers sometimes not very useful. But nevertheless, career is something that you discover in a journey. So do stay on and post us more questions so that we also remain engaged throughout the week. And we want you also to be engaged and engage us too, and so that this becomes a very learningful journey. And I guess you are into the 8th week, so we were just reviewing the lessons that you have already learned. So you are soon going to switch to information privacy as another module in this course, but you have almost completed all the lessons that are relevant to cybersecurity management and cybersecurity policy, more from an administrative or techno managerial point of view. And you have already understood that this is not a technical course, but technology is one resource that is involved in this in this space called cybersecurity. But that's not the only thing. We also have seen there are other stakeholders and other aspects that are involved in cybersecurity management, which involves people, which involves policies and processes, standards and frameworks. So that is what we have seen so far, and my effort in this course is to give a decent foundation on cybersecurity, and particularly concepts. Okay. For example, in the slide that is shown here, you are seeing some keywords like threats, attack, vulnerability, and risk. Okay. And oftentimes, these words are used interchangeably. Okay. When people talk about cybersecurity, they may use these terms as if they mean the same. Okay. So you have seen now, having gone through the lectures, you now understand what is a threat. Threat is not a risk. Okay. Threat is a source of risk. Okay. Risk is the ultimate thing that happened, but it is actually threats that lead to a state of risk. Okay, a risk is like a state. Okay, attack is an event that occurs at a point in time. Okay, and attack happens because there is a threat, and threat has a certain probability. Okay, so there are also chances involved. Okay, just because it's going to rain, it doesn't mean that there's going to be a flood. Okay, even if there is heavy rain, if you are prepared, then you know that there cannot be a flood, or the water is not going to really cause any major risk to you. Okay, so there is also something called preparedness, okay, which actually brings us to the topic of residual risk. Okay, we are actually prepared, but despite our well preparedness, there could be major events, okay, which can actually sort of go beyond our capability to protect ourselves. Okay, so that is called residual risk, or that which is left over, okay, despite our current preparation. Okay. And also there is vulnerability. Okay, so vulnerability is okay. So you have threads, you have preparation, but despite that, there are certain holes, okay, which you have in plug. Okay, so those holes are the vulnerable points of vulnerability as far as you are concerned, and it is a vulnerability that actually hackers exploit. Okay? So exploit is also a technical word. We have discussed this. So it is the exploit is planted through a point of vulnerability, and finally, that leads to impact. Okay. So so the impact is also a determinant of risk. Okay. Just because there was an attempt on or there was actually a, attempted attack, it doesn't mean that it had any impact. Okay, so risk also reflects impact. Okay, so keep that in mind. So therefore, it's a very composite indicator of something that is adverse. Okay, that can potentially happen, but what probability exists for it to happen, and if it happens, what is the impact? Okay, the risk takes into account all these aspects. So just keep that in mind. Risk is not just threat, risk is not attack, risk is not vulnerability, but risk is a combination of all this. Okay, so this is something that you have seen. So you have already seen that the formula for risk is actually risk is equal to loss frequency into loss magnitude minus measurement uncertainty. Okay, measurement uncertainty. Okay, in the formula that was given, there is also one more factor in the formula, which is minus a risk that is already covered by existing measures. Okay, well, so well, in the new edition of the textbook, I checked that they have removed that factor because that is a bit confusing. Because when you do risk assessment, we have seen in risk assessment, there is risk identification, risk assessment, risk control. Okay, three aspects of risk management. So in the risk assessment process, essentially, you are evaluating only those aspects, or we are only evaluating vulnerabilities which exist despite the current controls, and therefore it's not very meaningful to have that factor in the formula. So if you can actually go by this formula, loss frequency into loss magnitude minus measurement uncertainty. I think somebody asked this question also in the chat box. So and essentially you're always calculating risk as residual risk, because the risk assessment process will only capture the risk that currently exists. Okay, after you have set in place certain measures for protection. Okay, despite that, there are vulnerabilities. That is what you look at. Okay? And hence, you have a valid point. Some of one of you asked that question. So my response would be this: that fact, the risk that is calculated using this formula is always the residual risk. Okay, I hope that clarifies. Okay, and I think this is one slide which is already covered, but this helps you again understand the effectiveness of using biometric devices, especially for authentication purposes. And they have their own limitations. That is something which I stressed in the lecture. Particularly, there are false positives and false negative. Okay? FAR is false acceptance rate, okay? Or that is actually false positive. How much false positives do occur? Okay, and FRR is false negative, okay, or false rejection ratio. And you can see that when false positive is very high, false negative is low, and vice versa. Okay, and so therefore there is a optimal meeting point. Okay? That is where you typically tune the device, but despite that, you can see that every device will have some false positive and some false negative. In the sense, if you use a biometric device, it has certain sensitivity, and it may allow a wrong person, or the detection can actually be a false positive in the sense you are not the right person, but you may be identified as the right person. Okay, that is false positive. False negative is you are the right person, but it rejects you. Okay, so there is chance. Okay, that is what it shows. Any calibrated devices will have some error. Okay, both on the positive side and on the negative side, and therefore it cannot be the only foolproof for ensuring authentication. So therefore, one should be aware. Okay, so at what range one is operating on the devices. Okay, and this is a topic I did not cover in the lecture, but I thought this will be of interest to many of you because blockchains have emerged as important technology, not only in financial transactions, cryptocurrencies, but also in several aspects of automating organizations using secure technologies. So the technology actually provides several advantages. Okay, so you must have heard that immutability is an important characteristic of blockchain technology and also security. Okay, and a third dimension of this technology is non-repudiation. Okay, I thought I will just discuss these three key words in connection with blockchain and how they ensure this. Okay. We have already discussed what is encryption. Okay. And we have looked at symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption and how encryption can be used for confidentiality. Okay. So when you generate two keys, okay, and the public key is used to encrypt a message, and when it is transmitted over a channel, even if somebody interrupts and gets your message, it is encrypted and therefore it cannot be read. Who can read an encrypted message? The one who has a private key. Okay? So the recipient has the private key to open, okay, or to decrypt the encrypted message. And only that person who has the private key can open. Therefore, a valid recipient has a private key. So that is the aspect of confidentiality, and that is the sort of security that encryption provides through a transcription, a transaction. So if it is a digital transaction, and for example, you are using your credit card to transact, or you are inputting your username and password, when it passes through encryption, okay, so your password or your credit card number or your CVV number, your date of birth, all are encrypted when it is passed from sender to recipient. And therefore, your message remains secure. Okay, that is first characteristic of security. Okay, so crypto transactions, for example, provide security thanks to encryption. Okay? That is point one. They also provide immutability. Okay, so immutability comes through another technology known as hashing. Okay? Hashing is basically a mathematical function. Essentially, what hashing means is that when you have a particular content, okay, and when that content is hashed using a hash function, okay, okay, it creates an output. Okay, it could be a 256-bit hash output. Okay, so the hashed value would be, of course, different from the actual content. Okay? But once a content or the content, a transaction data in a blockchain is hashed using a hash function, and once the hash is generated, now even a small change in the content would lead to a totally different hash value. And hence, if the content is altered, okay, suppose you made a transaction for say $100,000 and you try to remove 1 0 from it, okay, the hash value changes, and therefore it will immediately detect that somebody is trying to manipulate. Or in other words, once a hash value is generated, well, that becomes a permanent ID for the transaction, and nobody can make a change because that hash value is permanent. Any new hash value will not be acceptable, or it is not the same. Of course, there is security to transactions, and the hash value further ensures that your transaction is closed and it is permanent and it is locked with a hash key. Okay? And that is permanent. That is the immutability of transactions. And the third aspect is non-repudiation, which is very important in financial transactions. What is non-repudiation? It's actually a legal term. Okay? What do you do in banking transactions? When you sign a check, for example, okay, and you want to issue a check to make a payment to a vendor or an individual. Okay? So you have a check issued in your name, and what is the ID? What are the identifying information in a check? Of course, it has your account number. Okay? And then finally, you write to whom you are writing the check, and also you write your name, and finally you put your signature. Actually, the main input for authentication that the check is signed by you is your signature. Okay? You know that in a traditional banking system, a check the signature will be verified with the signature that is stored in the system. Okay? And it is oftentimes manually compared, okay, in the traditional banking scenario. So the signatures are manually compared. And if it appears to be the same, the one to whom you issue the checks receives the money, and if the of course signature is different, then the flag is raised. Now, suppose you're very clever, okay? You want to satisfy a vendor that, well, I have issued a check, okay, and but at the same time you don't have money in your account, or you don't actually really, you later decide that you don't want to make the payment, or you want to refuse to accept that you have made the signature. Suppose you made the signature slightly differently and gave that check, and the accountant or the teller may actually look at your signature and may look, well, it looks alike, okay, but there is some difference, okay. It's a gray area. You later claim in the bank that I did not issue that check. Somebody else has stolen my checkbook or made the signature, it is not me. That is called repudiation. That is called repudiation. You are refusing to accept that you actually made the signature. Okay? Nishkash, I will come to you. I know you have a question. But transactions should be non-repudiable. If people keep refusing that they made the transaction, then it becomes a real problem in financial transactions. So therefore, there is a need for non-repudiation. Okay? Now imagine how private key in encryption can be used to ensure non-repudiation. Okay? In a blockchain transaction, when you make a transaction, your transaction also requires your private key. Okay, or a private key acts as your digital signature. You have already heard this in the lecture. Okay, so the non-repudiation is ensured through digital signature or private key. Okay, you sign your transaction with your private key. Okay, or you encrypt your transaction using a private key. And hence, you cannot refuse that somebody else made that transaction, because the transaction accompanies your private key. Okay, so three characteristics of blockchains are immutability, security, and non-repudiation, which are actually ensured through technologies of two technologies, encryption and hashing. And you also know that blockchain is a linked list technically from the data structure point of view. So every block actually refers to the previous block through the hash key, okay, that is generated by the previous block. Okay, so through the keys, it is linked, okay, as a chain. So that is the concept of a blockchain, and each block contains certain standard fields, okay, and that fields pertain to the transaction that is performed, and that block as a whole is hashed, and a key is generated, which becomes the identifier for that block, permanent identifier that block, which is immutable. So I thought I will give you an outline of blockchains also, because that is a related technology. Now let me open up for questions. I think somebody raised hands. Can I? Okay, let me look at chat. Okay, let me first, Nishkarsh, what is your question? You have raised hands. Hello.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, audible now.
Sir, I wanted to ask that we were talking about blockchains earlier.
Say that again.
We were talking about blockchains earlier. They
Correct.
use a method of hashing. So
Yes.
those hash functions are collision resistant functions or normal hash functions?
Collision resistant. Okay, that's a technical term. Many people may not be familiar with it. That actually ensures the integrity of the collision resistance is basically to protect against hackers. So these are all underlying technologies to ensure security of blockchain transactions.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. And I would encourage you to credit a course on blockchains, which is separately available in NPTEL, if you want to learn more. Okay, now let me look at some questions that are coming up in the chat box. Somebody asked for sharing the screen. Okay, that is done. Hiramani asks, what is the difference between risk and vulnerability? Okay. Okay, I think this is like, reading the whole Mahabharata, and then you finally ask what's the relation between Ram and Sita. But all questions are genuine. Okay, so there are chances that you get confused between Ram and Sita. It is perfectly fine. Okay, so I can tell you that again, that suppose, okay, let me actually use, use this diagram to explain. Okay, so here actually I have tried to show what is vulnerability. Okay. So in the trivial example that I have shown, a man is walking on the road with he has worn a shoe. The road is maintained well, but unfortunately somebody dropped a banana peel on the road. Okay? Although the road is maintained or protected very well, but despite that, it happened, so happened that there is a banana peel. Okay. So this is the point of vulnerability. Okay. Or you can see that this is your asset. Okay. That is what I said. So your computer systems, okay, your networks, okay, the whole infrastructure, okay, that has a physical wall, and then you have, firewalls and other technologies that protects or reports attacks. But despite that, there could be vulnerabilities which you haven't fixed. Okay, or for example, you haven't updated your Windows systems. Okay, or you haven't updated your Mac. Okay, so and there may be a new threat because of which the the manufacturer is actually giving you an update, a security update, which you actually don't update, because there is some downtime required sometimes for updates. Okay, so that is called a hole in the wall. Okay, a hole in the wall is your vulnerability. Okay, and vulnerability actually paves way for an attack, and attacks leads to certain impact, certain loss. Okay, and that is the impact. So now we have seen the TBA worksheet. You know, if you go through the lessons that we learned. Okay, threat, vulnerability, asset. Okay, sheet. Okay, so risk is calculated for every asset and for every threat. Okay? So, so when you look at a particular asset, you find that the asset has certain vulnerabilities like 1, 2, 3, etc. Okay, it is from that you actually calculate, but rest of it is actually well protected. You also see that there is protection against external threats. Okay, but there are also holes. Okay, that is the basis for calculating the loss frequency. Okay, loss frequency is a function of probability of threat and probability of success of attack. Okay, success of attack. Okay, success of attack depends on how protected you are. Okay, if you are not vulnerable at all, then your success of attack is very, very low. Okay, so that is where the connection between the risk and the vulnerability comes. Okay, risk is a function of vulnerability, but that is not the only variable on which risk depends on. Okay, risk also depends on your impact. Do you understand that? Risk is equal to loss frequency into loss magnitude. Okay, so the loss magnitude is derived from the impact. Who asked this question? Hiramani, are you clear? Hello? I think somebody asked the question and left, it seems. So I hope I explained. Okay. So in the calculation of risk, vulnerability is only a probability. But that is not the only measure that you use to calculate risk. Okay, you also look at the probability of threat, and you also look at the impact if that attack happens. Then you also minus the measurement error from that. That is the overall risk that you calculate. Okay, so risk and vulnerability are related but not the same. Okay, somebody said we don't have access to the research paper for week 1. Okay, which is the paper that you're referring to? I think I have given you an online link. We will check this, okay, out, and if we will check if why it is not accessible, because always when you access an online resource, we put a date to it. Okay, access dawn, you must have seen that. Okay, because an online resource may be accessible today, but it may not be accessible tomorrow because the owner can actually withdraw that resource. So therefore, when we checked in the beginning of this course, this was accessible. And for some reason, if it's not accessible today, we will actually try to look for an alternate source. But we cannot guarantee this because these are published papers. Okay, and these papers are actually copyrighted, and they also belong to the publisher. Okay, and if somebody is willing to put this up online, then we find it. Okay, otherwise we don't. Okay? So in NPTEL program, we don't actually buy and provide you resources. Okay, if some resources are open and online, we try to help you with that. Okay? Otherwise, you may have to go to a library to access this resources where it is available. Balgopal, can you check this paper for week 1 and see if free link is available, and then send it on a chat.
Sure, sir.
Or in the chat box.
Okay, sir.
All right. Okay. Namira, does that answer your question? Okay, I think the one who asked the question is not available. Okay, Niharika wants to know what is non-repudiation. Okay, repudiation is like this. Okay, you have now typed your name as Niharika Ravi. Okay, and now you sign out. Okay, and then you come in somebody else's name. Okay, you sign in through somebody else's account. Okay, and suppose that is Sujata. And we were keeping track of you, and we saw that Niharika was here, and then she left, and then she came back in some other name. Okay, and you come in the name of Sujata, and you say, "I never came in. I came in just now. Okay, I didn't ask a question. Okay, that is repudiation. Okay, you refuse to accept what you did. Okay, now that is not desirable in online banking, especially in formal transactions where agents are involved. Okay, X, Y, these are two agents. X and Y are exchanging, okay, in a financial transaction. Okay, you get giving and taking. But if the giver refuses that I gave, then there is a problem in the integrity of the transaction, right? So you cannot trust the system because people refuse after giving a check. That is the example I gave. Okay, that refusal is technically known as repudiation. Okay? So non-repudiation is the quality or the attribute that is required in formal transaction. Once you transact or once you involve in a formal transaction, you should not be able to, even if you want to, you should not be able to, okay, able to repudiate. Okay, the system should ensure that there is no fake transaction, there is no fake identity. Okay, there is no refusal of transaction, and that is very important in financial transaction. Okay, and that is known as non-repudiation. Yes, Nick. So does that answer your question, Harika?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. What are the tools used to identify threats? Okay, that is a big question. Okay, if you are asking for commercial tools to identify various threats. Okay, so there are multiple uh, types of technology that are actually available to detect. And there are technologies that just detect and report. There are also technologies that detect and protect. Okay? Malware detection and prevention. Okay, detection is one, prevention is one. Okay, if you want to go for both, the tools will be more costly. Okay, intrusion detection and prevention. Okay, intrusion detection systems are there, that is IDS, and there are also intrusion detection and prevention systems. Okay, so there are also firewalls. Okay, we discussed firewalls, which are actually gatekeepers between the inside and outside. Okay, so these are standard technologies that are available for detecting threats. And there is also integrative management of integrated threat management systems today, where all these tools are integrated into one platform. Okay, so there are different commercial solutions available. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in advising you what is the right tool that you should choose, etc. Please do not embarrass me, because that is, I don't actually work in that space. But if you listen to the lecture, which was given by the external expert, you may get some indications about what are some of the tools, commercial tools. I don't think he also mentions commercial tools, because it is not very fair. Okay? Because we don't want to promote any particular company or vendor, but we actually talk about the systems in a more generic sense. Okay. Okay, and Nishkash, you have a question, you have raised your hand.
Yes, sir. I
Yes.
did. I wanted to ask that in the blockchains, do we use SHA algorithms, secure hash algorithms?
Which algorithm?
Secure hash algorithm.
Hash algorithm. Yes, that's what I tried to explain to you. Hash is
Uh,
is the heart of the matter because that is the immutability of blockchains. The technology that makes blockchain transaction immutable is a hash function. So once the hash algorithm is applied and a hash value is created, the transaction becomes permanent. It's like sealing the transaction. The hash value is a permanent identifier for a block. Now you cannot change the contents of the block because the hash value will change. So no transaction can be altered once it is made. And
then
that is
what is the
hash.
okay? So what is the commonly used hash algorithm like SHA-256 or SHA-512?
You're saying something which I'm not hearing. Sharp? What do you mean?
SHA-256,
Can you type,
SHA-256.
can you type that in the chat box?
Okay, sir. I did.
What is the most common? Oh, don't. Oh, okay. So I'm not. I can't tell you this because you're asking about what is the most commonly used algorithm. SHA 2256. I think this has to do with the number of bits, right? Could be 256 bit, it could be 512, etc. I assume so, but this I should not answer this question because I may not be. I'm not very updated on this. But
Sir, I,
well, hash algorithms are used. I encourage you to take a course on blockchain separately. My effort was only to link cyber security and the blockchain as a specific case of it. Okay, hash functions is not something that I cover here. That has a lot of mathematical foundations. Okay, and you have to build from that. Then you can actually look at what are the current algorithms that are popular in use, etc. Okay, so I can't deviate to that. I'm not prepared also. Sorry about it.
okay, sir. Thank
Okay, and Nishkarsh, so that was your question. Yeah. Go hands down. No, yes. Okay, I think Balgopal has responded to Namira's question. Okay, all right. Okay, and also Ravi has a question. Can we have case studies also? We go through the presentation and lecture, but going through the case studies will help. Yeah, again, actually, you're coming back to the same topic, which actually I said in the first lecture itself. The original cases, like the Harvard Business School cases or research papers, etc., have commercial value and copyrights. Okay? So formally, we should not and we cannot share the original papers with you on any platform. But that is why we actually try to give you links to the case studies. Even Harvard case studies, some of them are available online. You know, for example, the case we Googled you, which is coming up. Okay? It's available online, it's free. So those cases you can access. And some snippets of this case studies are available in other sites which we searched out. And in the course outline, you have received links to that. Okay? Apart from that, we are helpless. So forgive. And the other way is if your institution has subscription to Harvard case, or your friend's institution has, etc. When I was a research scholar, that is how I used to get research papers. Okay. My institution did not have subscription to all the papers that I wanted. Okay. Oftentimes you reach this dilemma. Well, I search for it, it's not subscribed by my digital library. Even in IIT Madras, I face that problem. Okay. Informs, which is an important set of journals, we don't have access to it. Okay, so what do I do? I ask my friends, can you actually do that? Okay, so I get it from sister institutions. Okay, don't be ashamed in asking for resources from uh, friends and colleagues where they may have access to. Okay, that is how we learn. Okay, so please uh, search for alternatives, and we can't provide everything to you, and that has a cost, and that also has legal implications. Okay, Rajiv. Okay. And you may also have noticed wherever there is a commercial case involved and we have not given you a copy, we do not ask questions on that case in the assignments, okay, to be fair to everyone. But that doesn't prevent you from learning the contents of the cases. Okay, and Namira asks, sir, could you please suggest some sources to refer PYQs? I didn't get what is a PYQ. What do you mean by PYQ? Namira, are you there? You said PYQ. Previous year question. Okay, sorry.
Previous year question paper.
Oh, okay, please. I know FAQ, but PYQ, I'm sorry, I was not so familiar with it. Previous year question papers. Well, this is not a resource I can provide because this will depend on the policy of the NPTEL platform. You can write to them what they do about previous year questions, because this is a fairly new course. Okay, this is the second run. Okay? So therefore, the question bank is limited, and you can see that as far as I know, there is no course on information privacy in NPTEL. Okay? It's a new phenomenon and it's a new course, and it's very difficult to give you questions because they are not in plenty. Okay? And not many years have passed after the course started. It's a new course. Okay? So bear with us and go through the lessons, go through the PowerPoints, go through the resources that you can access, and you will be fine as far as your exams are concerned. Okay, somebody is asking, provide me with names of open source sites for most recent research articles and journals on cybersecurity. Well, this is again interesting. All of you are aware of scholar.google.com. Okay. So we call it Google Scholar. Google Scholar does this job of aggregation. Okay. If you search for a paper in Google Scholar, not in Google Search, but in Google Scholar, if you search for a paper, that is actually a very targeted search. Okay? And they do this aggregation, right? If that paper is posted by anyone, anywhere in any site, Google Scholar will tell you, okay, and you can actually, it will give the link and you can actually download the paper from that site. Okay, and other source is ResearchGate. Okay, okay, let me actually get the actual address. Give me a moment. Right. Okay. I have shared the site address here, researchgate.net. I believe some of you are already members in ResearchGate, and if you are not a member, I encourage you to become a member or you sign in with your credentials to ResearchGate. And in ResearchGate, you can actually search for research papers. And sometimes the paper is readily available. The authors have shared it here. It's an author network, basically. It's a scholar network. Okay, so and sometimes the paper is not available. Then you can actually search for the names of the authors in ResearchGate, and you can actually send a request to the author to share the paper. And generally an author will share one's paper, although it doesn't serve the interest of the publisher, but an author may be willing to share a version of that paper sometimes, which was a version before it was published, because there may be copyright issues. So they will usually share that paper. If somebody asks me for a paper, I share it. There is a incentive for sharing, that is citation. Okay, you may actually read my paper and cite me in your paper, in your work. So so keep that in mind. ResearchGate is another place to go to get research papers. I hope that answers your question. So I've shared two sites, scholar.google.com and researchgate.net. Okay, and there is a last question. I think we are almost done. How the privacy techniques can be utilized in real world scenario. Kindly mention some scenarios, especially for banking sector. Okay, so I think you are jumping the gun now. So you have the privacy module starting now. Okay, from next week onwards, it is actually on information privacy. So, and information security and information privacy are closely related. And you will learn about information privacy in the digital world from next week onwards. Okay, so you can defer this question for the next live interaction. Okay, which will be in the next month. And if you still have questions on privacy, you please ask that time. So you will definitely go through foundations of information privacy, and you may actually get satisfactory answers very soon. That's what I believe. And let me also look at the questions that were shared by you in the chat box. I think we already answered most of the questions. Oh, there's some problem. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, there was a question in the case of ransomware attack, how will the company pay the demanded amount to attacker? Generally, per my limited knowledge, they may pay to their bank account, net banking, credit, debit, UPI wallet. I heard about the cryptocurrency, about which I have no knowledge. If the company pays in methods mentioned in the option 1, cybercrime police can easily trace them and arrest them, right? As cybersecurity student, I'm curious. Thank you. Well, good question as to how you make payment to a hacker. Because in a ransomware attack, the hacker has taken control of your machine. The machine is encrypted and the key is with the hacker. Okay? And you need that key to decrypt the machine. Somebody else logged your house and, standing with the key. Okay, you pay money and then the key will be given to you. Now, this is a problem. it's on one side, your house is locked or your business is down. Now you can run your system. You cannot run your systems or your e-commerce is down. Okay. And you are actually losing revenues and it is an illegal attack. Okay. So it's a thief who is at the door and who is actually blocking your resources. And hence you can, of course, look for remedies. But today, when you learn again on policies, particularly privacy policy and all, you will find that if there is a hacker attack, okay, or if there is a cybersecurity incident, it has to be reported, okay, to a competent authority. Okay. In India, there is something called Digital Personal Data Protection Act, okay, or DPDP, okay, which again requires an attack to be reported in a stipulated period of time. In GDPR, it is 74 hours. Within 74 hours, an incident should be reported. And hence, what that means is that if there is a breach or if there is a ransomware attack, okay, you are supposed to report it first. Okay? Report the incident first, okay, and create a report, proper report, and report it to the police, report it to the competent authority, and then you are safe because you have to restore your operations, okay, and you are paying a thief. And if somebody is placing a barrel on your head and ask for money, you have to protect your life. Okay, you may actually give money and protect yourself. Okay, that is a kind of condition. Okay? So I think the law will not punish you because you are trying to protect yourself. Okay? I'm not an expert of the law here, but as far as I understand, to the best of my knowledge, paying a hacker to save your business after reporting, okay, you must be safe. But I'm not here speaking as a legal expert, but keep in mind that you should actually create enough evidence of a cyber attack and report it and then protect yourself. I hope that will be my answer. That satisfies you. But this is also an accounting problem, and experts in that area should actually answer you, saying what is the best mode of payment. And oftentimes you may not have the option because the hacker would say pay by cryptocurrency alone. Okay? Then you have to pay in that way. Otherwise, you don't get the key to open your system, right? So you succumb. And I think the question number 2 on calculating residual risk, I explained in the beginning itself, and that is answered already. All right. And is there any other question? Okay, there are 2 questions. I want to know about the opportunities for a research scholar in industries in India. Let me again tell you, this is something related to career, right? And it's not fair for me to actually give any advice on career because that is a separate specialization. Okay? And it requires a lot more inputs from an individual before any advice can be given. Okay? So you may be misguided if you say, oh, a lot of opportunities in India, go to Amazon, go to Google, but it also depends on, your specialization. It's always a match, okay, between your competency and what the other side is looking for. Yeah. So I would say research scholars do have opportunities in research or in the research wings of organizations, but check out what kind of qualifications and experience are they looking for. Okay? So from I would say in Indian context, in academic research, okay, we have research programs. Most of our research scholars post their PhD, they go to an academic institution, but some of them, of course, go to industry, and they find jobs in specialized areas where research is active in that organization. Sanjay has asked, or one person asked, a Iran commander was killed by a US drone. How is it possible? How do I answer this question? A drone actually killed him. Okay? And you can read about it in newspapers. Okay? in public domain. I just reported what I read in the public domain, and it is a US drone that killed. Okay. And I think humanoids, you must be reading a little more on current technology as to what is going on. Today, you can actually send a humanoid to an enemy parlance. Could be a bee or it could be an insect that is going to the other side, but it will be carrying very, uh, you know, uh, exploits. So a lot of new developments are happening in technology. Drone is one of them, and it is possible to use drone against individual. Okay? It's a weapon in a war today. Renga, this may be, yeah, we are turning 1 o'clock, so I will close it. One last question. Is there some document available on how draft policy on data protection and privacy compare with GDPR? Well, there is a discussion coming up on both. Okay, our India's DPDP, so they call it Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which became an act last year, and also GDPR. Okay, so you will see student groups actually discussing this in the upcoming sessions. Okay, you can wait for that. So we do have sessions on board, and you will be able to get some comparison of the two. Okay, so you have to wait for the next module. I think I have covered all your questions in the chat box in Zoom, as well as the questions that came in the track that was opened for this live interaction in Google. Okay? And if you still have questions, feel free to ask us all your questions in the chat box, and we will be responding to you. And we look forward to receiving more feedback, okay, more questions, and more things, more responses from you about the course. Okay? Enjoy this course, and all the best. And I'm looking forward to meeting you all in the next live interaction and reserve your questions. Reserve some questions for the next live interaction. Thank you very much to all of you, and have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.